thank you all for coming this morning to the continuing series of Pearls of Wit and Wisdom. We've had a fabulous lineup of women of distinction across the city, and we're delighted today to have Sister Nadine join us. Those of you who have been up to Mount St. Francis know what a gorgeous place it is. The sisters have been there since the 1960s, just celebrated 50-year anniversary of the construction of the chapel at Mount St. Francis. And I will give you a preview that starting in May, the parish, which lives on the grounds there, is beginning a partnership with Pillar to offer classes at St. Francis of Assisi Parish, which is at the center geographically of the campus. Sister Nadine has been a friend of mine for some time, and I am just so delighted that she's able to come today and share her journey personally and also tell you a little bit about the magnificent history of the Sisters of St. Francis of Perpetual Adoration. So without further introduction, Sister Nadine.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am really delighted to be here. And like I told Jim before, one of the reasons I have a PowerPoint is because I couldn't imagine anybody looking at me for a whole hour. When I looked up and saw this supposed to be wit and wisdom, I thought, oh, this is never going to work. Number one, I'm the least wittiest person I know. I can never remember any jokes or tidbits of stories and things like that. And if I do have any wisdom, it's due to the grace of God. So I'll give God thanks right off the bat here. This is just one Sister of St. Francis of Perpetual Adoration's life story. And so compound that by 500 of us that are spread across the world, and you would meet some very interesting characters, let me tell you. So, for one thing I could tell you, I have never had a dull moment in my life. Sometimes I wish I did have a few more dull moments, but that is not true. And I guess that's because God knows what to give and bless each one of us with. And so I really feel graced and blessed to have the life I have. I want to share with you some of our celebration of our 150th anniversary as a congregation. We were founded in Olpe, Germany. And also then we were so blessed in this last year to have our founders, Maria Theresia Bonzel, beatified. So now she is blessed in the church. And that's like, I mean, I'll have some slides later on to share with you about that, because that was really just the highlight of our year last year. I can't believe this, but now look at that prayerful little girl on her way to church, you know. I did start at an early age going to church. You do that when you're, excuse me, out on the farm and in a country area, you know. One of the parents usually stays home, so the other one can leave the kids at home, and the other one takes the ones to church. Well, since I was the firstborn of four, I think I just got drugged to church right away. And I never regret that, to tell you the truth. And of course, we have those fond moments of First Communion. Now, I have to tell you, I grew up in a little farming community in Cumming County, Nebraska. We had a country school, 2 floors, that was taught by the Sisters of St. Francis of Perpetual Adoration. And my first and second grade teacher, second grade is when I made my first communion, was Sister Margaret Mary Preister. And she is still alive and well, and she never lets me forget that now I'm her boss as a provincial. And now I'm giving her jobs to do where she used to be the one giving me jobs to do. That, I would have to say, the influence of the sisters in my life had a profound effect upon my vocational call. All through grade school, I had the greatest teachers. They played on the merry-go-round with us, and they played baseball with us, and they skated and everything like that. It was like they were real people, even though they were in full habit back in those days, and kind and gentle, but also very firm. I know Sister Margaret Mary challenged me, even in second grade, to be a little bit better than I was, always giving me more responsibility. She tells to this day that she says, I could leave the classroom and leave Sister Nadine, no, I wasn't sister then, Nadine in charge, and she says, I knew there would be no trouble. And I thought, it's not gonna I can't imagine that. So, but anyway, the sisters had a great influence in my life. Their sister Margaret Mary, in her full habit, and how I first met her when I was in second grade, and here she is today, and working very hard, being our coordinator of our sisters at our Mutterhaus up at Mount St. Francis. There's my 8th grade teacher, Sister Mark, who was from New Mexico and taught us all kinds of cowboy songs. I know, I just loved it. We had a great time. And then after grade school, I decided I wanted to go to the convent. Well, Dad and Mom couldn't quite figure out why I wanted to go all the way to Colorado Springs. You know, we live in, 80 miles from Omaha, Nebraska. Why don't you just go to some of those nuns down there? And I said, but they're not our sisters. I have to go to our sisters. So on the bus, or no, on the train we go. They always had weekends for young girls who were interested in going to the convent. They called it an aspirancy. We were aspiring to be religious. Well, I don't know if we really were, but anyway, that's what we were called. So there were 5 of us in our 8th grade graduating class. Big school, big school. We were one of the smallest classes, actually. But anyway, so the 2 boys went to the seminary on what we called our 8th grade sneak days, and the 3 girls went out to the convent here in Colorado Springs on a train, 13 years old, by ourselves. The train leaves Omaha at like midnight and gets in here at like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning with the change in Denver. Now, figure out these are 13-year-old girls who've never been anywhere except maybe to Omaha once or twice in our life. And we're out here on this new adventure. And I do have some pictures of us climbing around, not in this presentation, on the rocks around there. Well, actually, all 3 of us came back out and went to high school, in the convent high school. And one of the boys in our 8th grade class went on to the seminary, and he eventually left, but he became a permanent deacon. And so 2 of us, Sister Marietta and I, are still within the religious community, so we've grown up in religious life together. So this little get-up that I'm wearing on the, let's see, whatever side it is the postulant garb. So we have a black skirt and a little black jacket and this little net veil. And those are my 2 grandmothers. It was one time when I was home, probably in the summer, to visit there. And so the high school was, right, the building that my office is in now as the Provincial was our high school. And my office was my English classroom. And I can still picture Sister Gabriel standing up in front of class, and history also, and teaching us there. So many, many fond memories. If you think that I started going to school there at 13, and I'm a lot older than that right now, pretty much most of my life has been at Mount St. Francis, so I pretty well know the nooks and crannies around Mount St. Francis, especially where the tunnels are. So this is what Mount St. Francis looked like way back when. There was no Peregrine development around it. There was no parish. There was... We actually came to Mount St. Francis in 1954, so we're celebrating our 60th year of being at Mount St. Francis. We moved our mother house from Denver, Colorado, because we started to outgrow it. You know, in those days we had new classes coming in that were of, 20 and 30s in number. And so we needed a larger place because it was not only our mother house, but where our provincial offices were, and we had a section that had for our retired sisters. So we outgrew the place in Denver, and this Mount St. Francis came available when Blevins Davis was looking to make a deal. It was just shortly after the Air Force Academy bid on the land just north of us. Our property butts up against the Air Force Academy. And I think he was looking that the Air Force Academy might want to purchase his land. Well, it wound up, no, they wanted the land north. So here he's stuck with all this property that had been a TB sanitarium, but had been empty for 10 years. And his wife had died, and she had left quite a substantial amount of money, and she said it was to be used for charitable purposes. So how it was through some attorney that one of our sisters got together with Blevins Davis and his attorney, and he says, you know, I'll make you a deal. You give me the money, and I'll give you Mount St. Francis. And it pretty much wound up being that. He gave us the charity of the property at Mount St. Francis, and then he got the money that was in his wife's trust account that was supposed to be used to give to charity. We really think we got the better end of the deal. In the beginning days, we had over 2,000 acres, and we didn't even know it. You know, we're just, even when I was older and more knowledgeable about all of Mount St. Francis, I didn't realize what a beautiful piece of property we had there and how extensive it was. But I pretty much climbed up around every place on that property there. Yes, I have climbed to the top of Blodgett Peak. We call it Mount Cedar, but it's really Blodgett Peak, you know. And there was intakes up along there too that have water coming down. And for years we used to walk up around there. These are some of my classmates from high school, and we get together about every 5 to 10 years, and so we were celebrating our 60th birthday all together at a particular point in time. I still have very fond memories of my high school years. Even if you are aspiring to be a religious, it doesn't mean you have perfect behavior the whole time. I can guarantee that. We're one of the classes that still gets together quite often. The year after I graduated, you know, we just wore them out. They closed down the aspirancy. But it was the right time to do that. Now I would never really advise that someone go to an all-girls school or an all-boys school if you're aspiring for a religious life. You need, I think, a healthy balance in that formation of your life. I don't know that it did me any harm, because here I am yet today, just the way I am. So, but anyway, these are some of my celebrating people. Okay, after you are in the postulancy for a year, you become a novice. So a novice gets a white veil, and that's me with my mom and dad around the chapel up there outside at Mount St. Francis. And the first year of the novitiate, you're supposed to learn how to pray. Well, to tell you the truth, I think it's wasted on first-year novices. You pray and work. And I really mean that quite literally. We had more jobs than you could shake a stick at around the convent. If you weren't working in the laundry, you were working in the kitchen. If you weren't working in the kitchen, you were working in the chapel or outside pulling dandelions. At least 3 to 4 hours a day. And then you were learning the regime of prayer. Oh, and in those days, we got up so early, so early. And we were supposed to have time for our own private prayer and meditation. Well, I have to tell you, they really tried to help us understand what meditation meant. I think I'm just getting it about now in my life. And the worst part is when you had to do it in chapel, and when you're in the first and postulants and first-year novices and second-year novice, you're always in the front rows. So when you start nodding your head because you're falling asleep at 6:30 in the morning because you're supposed to be meditating, all the professed sisters behind you see that. And sometimes it's like when they give a recommendation about whether you should go on in religious life, it's like, I don't know if she'll ever stay awake, you know. That was not my problem. I have to tell you that. I have to also tell you that I had a crisis of faith when I was a second-year novice. Sister Evangeline, God rest her soul, had class with us, a faith class of all things, and I can't remember the context of all of what she said, but it came to me in a realization that I was a Catholic. I was even a novice of the Sisters of St. Francis, and it's like, it just sort of like happened automatically. And it was like, now, Nadine, did you really choose to be here? Did you really choose Jesus Christ? Do you really want to be a Catholic? Or are you just Catholic because that's the way Mom and Dad were brought up? The nuns got you here, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a very enlightening moment for me in realizing I had to answer for myself. I was probably growing up, you know, coming to that next age of maturity. And it was a very blessed time for me in that I could talk with Sister Evangeline about it and with the rest of my classmates. Now, the rest of my classmates were a little leery. They thought I shouldn't be confessing things like that maybe I didn't have, you know, the faith that was handed on to me. But I don't regret at all that I had that experience in that age that really gave me the realization this is a decision for me to make in my life, not just because the ball's rolling down the highway that way. After first and second year novitiate, which are study times, we go out on mission. And Sister Marilyn, another one of our sisters, is a great innovator. She's always thinking up new programs and searching out needs, and she's the only social worker we've ever had in our community. Now, Sister Jeanette is also. But we had an orphanage down in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and at one point it was closer to being a true orphanage, but most of the children were there because their parents couldn't afford to support them, or they had behavioral problems that the parents couldn't deal with. They actually did have parents, but they just could not be cared for. But this was in the early 70s, and the time of orphanages was sort of dissipating a bit, and we went into what we called a child care center, where some of the most difficult of the boys actually would not be able to be placed back in their homes, and came to what we called St. Anthony Child Care Center. So it was a transition from a huge orphanage setting to a smaller, we had 12 at that particular place, and then later on we opened a group home for the older boys, and this is myself at the group home with the older boys. And I have to tell you, this is the closest I want to get to parenting teenagers. They were wonderful years of my life. I have to tell you that too. I have to tell you that this was a time I took off the veil. Probably not for a good reason, but we did have behavioral problems with some of the boys, and when one of them tried to strangle me with my veil one time, I said, I don't think I need this, and took it off, and have not ever regretted that either, for a variety of reasons, one of which is I still get yelled at across the parking lot, "Hi, sister!" The most embarrassing is when you're coming out of a liquor store with all this liquor that you're getting for the sisters for jubilee celebrations. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? So, and the other realization that I've had, at least this is true for me, it's not true for everybody, is I believe every person deserves respect, not because of what you wear. If you're going to treat me differently because of what I wear, that does not sit good with me. That just does not sit good with me. And I'm not shy about telling people I'm Sister Nadine, a sister of St. Francis. So either you know it or you don't, but either way, respect me as a person, just like everyone else is God's child. So, so the group home and having fun with the boys there. Oh yeah, I was what's called their recreational therapist. Huh. Yeah, right. You know what that meant? I got to run around with them all over the place. We climbed more mountains than I care to think about, and especially the Petroglyph Park in Albuquerque, and went horseback riding and swimming and all of those kinds of things. But they also knew I was pretty serious. We'd be out, like, say, climbing someplace up in a park and all, and I'd tell them, we're back at the bus by such and such a time. And they had watches, or I would honk the horn and stuff like that. And if they were not back, I left, you know, and they were running behind. And, you know, the other kids on the bus would say, well, sister, you can't leave Mickey here. I says, well, is he on the bus? Is he here on time? No, you just can't do that, sister. You can't leave Mickey here. I says, well, Mickey wasn't on time. So, of course, I'd go down around the curve and stop so Mickey could catch up, you know. I wasn't totally heartless, but trying to teach him a lesson. Anyway, I had great years. After being down in Albuquerque, I spent a year in Arvada, Colorado, with Sister Ricardus, who is another one of those inspirations to me. Now, this is what makes our life a little bit different than most of yours. After the child care center closed, I was there like, I think, 6 years, and the group home closed. I went to Denver. I was going to save the children of the streets of Denver, because there was a community of sisters living there, and that's who I wanted to live with. So I get to Denver, and I'm pounding the pavement looking for a job, and Sister Eileen, who was our provincial at that time, she calls up, and she says, Sister Nadine, did you find a job yet? And I says, no, but I'm going to this place tomorrow and this place, et cetera, et cetera. And she says, well, I want you to go out to Arvada and talk to Sister Ricardus, because we need somebody out there. Sister so-and-so, and I don't even remember who it was, has to go someplace else. And I said, oh, no, not me. No, not me. No, I'm going to get involved in child care work, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Sister Nadine, I want you to think about this. Oh, Sister Eileen, please don't ask that of me. Oh, please don't ask. Well, you think about it overnight, and I'll call you tomorrow. Oh, yeah, right. This is the way it goes. So I talked to my housemates there. I say, can you believe what Sister Eileen did? She called and told me I'm supposed to go out to Arvada. This is a huge religious education program at St. Joan of Arc Parish there. We had classes every day of the week, afternoons, evenings, and Saturdays with special kids like that. And I said, number one, I told her, I says, I don't know anything about this. So they says, well, when she calls tomorrow, just tell her, you know, what you think your inadequacies are. So I did. Sister Eileen calls. She says, now, I just want you to go out there and talk with Sister Ricardus. I says, okay. So I go out, and there's a nice little house about 6 blocks from the parish. And I go out, and we sit across the kitchen table, and she tries to explain to me this whole huge religious education program. And she laughs with me afterwards about this. She said, and you know, she said, you were so darn particular, you wanted to know how many times you were going to have to take the garbage out. It was another one of the best years of my life. Of course, I wound up saying yes. You don't often say no to a provincial. We had some wonderful spiritual prayer times together, just the two of us, which was very different for me than praying in a large group. We would recite the Psalms, and instead of just going on to the next prayer, we'd pause and speak out loud what that psalm meant to us, how it touched our heart, what it was inspiring us to go forward with. And she was the most organized person in the whole wide world. And to this day, I say I learned everything that I needed to know about parish ministry from her. It was a delightful year. She was 60 years older than I was at that time, which I look back and am amazed about. And she died when she was 106, just recently here at our Mutterhaus. Just truly an inspirational woman. So I get this year in Arvada, and I think that's bad enough, which wound up being very good. And the following summer, I make final vows. Okay, so, and then, you know, the church is really going through stuff at this time. They were in a period of evolution, and so we were in promises for a while, because if they weren't final, they couldn't be vows. So we were in promises. Then we had to be vowed, because then vows were, the promises were out of the picture, so then you had to do vows. But anyway, so we get to final vows and have the final vow ceremony and all that kind of business. And it's like I was ready to go either back to Arvada if that needed, or go on with my education. And again, Sister Eileen comes up and she says, we want you to do vocation ministry for the community. You know, go out and talk to young people about entering the community. Well, I thought, okay, well, my classmates, to this day, I still pout about it. My classmates thought, you can't make her vocation director. She's making final vows one day, and you expect her to go out the next day and to be able to recruit people to the... She doesn't know anything about religious life yet. So they were not very supportive, which I still give them a hard time about. But again, I had the next 7 years of the most wonderful experience dealing with young women who were interested in religious life and journeying with them. And these are two young women that became novices under the time that I was there. And one of them, on the right-hand side, Marge, is now a Sister of Charity. She decided the Franciscan flavor wasn't quite what she was looking for. And that's also part of our job as vocation ministers, to make sure a young woman is in the place that's the best fit for her. And so even though she's not in our community, she's in another religious community, and I still keep up contact with her. I have another friend that was with us for a while who's in a Benedictine community. And so that's what it's about. We used to be so terribly competitive as religious communities, you know, like stealing people away from each other so we could make sure our novitiate halls were filled. And that definitely is not present in the culture of religious life anymore today. Then I moved into youth ministry over at St. Paul Parish after my time of being in formation. And I had to teach fourth grade religion because they couldn't afford to pay me full-time as a youth minister. Well, I've never been a teacher in my whole life, but anyway, I struggled through that year. And then they decided that I better go on for some education. It looked like I was going to be involved in parish work for a while, and I should go get educated. So went to Boston College, another fantastic year of my life. It was like an intercommunity religious experience. We had people from Ireland, from Australia, from England, from China, from Japan, from all over the world who were studying at Boston College in the pastoral ministry program. And we lived in an old convent. And so we had many parties, I can tell you that. But we also had to study very hard. And so it was an experience of internationality that I really treasured from those days. And some of these people I'm still in contact with. I'm still trying to get a trip to Australia, but hasn't worked out yet. This is when Sister Marietta and I, Sister Marietta is the second from the left over here, and I'm way on the end, and these are my other 8th grade classmates. And Sister Margaret Mary, pretty much stuck right there in the middle, you see her? And so we were celebrating our 25th anniversary as religious women, went back home to Monterey, Nebraska, where we had entered from, and had a celebration there with our families and friends, and it was just a wonderful and delightful experience, and I think it's a way to give witness to others about what religious life is about. And after that, okay, no, that wasn't quite there. So then, I went to Boston College. After that, I worked 9 years at St. Mary's Cathedral in parish ministry. Loved that. Had wonderful experiences there, too. I think my heart is still in parish ministry. But then you get another call from another provincial, and she says, "We want you to be the treasurer." And I say, "What in the name of who do you want? How can we do this?" Well, I had been on our provincial council. You know, you have to learn to keep your mouth shut. I need to learn that. Because when you ask a lot of questions, they think you know what you're doing. So they thought, because I asked a lot of questions about the finances and all, that I'd be a perfect fit for the treasurer job. So I did that for 9 years. And again, what a learning experience. And I have to tell you, I love that just as much as everything else I've loved in my life. But anyway, these are 6 of us who have been treasurers of our religious community. And Sister Frances, the one way on the right, standing, is the present treasurer at this time. Now, the other fear about this is you get recycled. So I'm about due to come around on this one again sometime, so we'll have to see where that goes. But parish work is one of my loves, and after serving as treasurer, I had another interesting year. I was without a job again. You know how that is. You know, I was going to take a little respite, you know, maybe a month or two to do my own personal renewal, things like that. And again, the provincial suggests, why don't you consider working for Caritas Fleet Services? Well, see, I knew about Caritas Fleet Services because as treasurer, you're responsible for the fleet of vehicles that the community has. And I thought, So there was a meeting in St. Louis. It's a big national gathering of women religious and who serve as treasurers. And Caritas Fleet Services is there as a vendor to talk to all the religious communities and try to convince them they should use their services. And so I sat down with the heads of the company, Tammy and Lou, and because they were looking for a religious woman to go out and talk to religious communities and, quote, sell them the services that Caritas provided. And they had, lay people doing it, but they thought it'd be a much better fit if a sister would be doing it. So I said, okay. So there I go for another year. Went up to Milwaukee to get my training, and then they sent me to Hartford, Connecticut, because they wanted a presence on the East Coast, because there are a lot of religious communities on the East Coast, a lot of nuns in a very compact area. Here we've got us down here, the Benedictines across the way, and the Mary Crest Sisters in Denver, but, not too many other ones right around in this area. So for a year, I travel up and down the East Coast, mostly north from Hartford up into the New York area, and talk to religious communities about using Caritas Fleet Services, which was to buy, sell, lease, and service your cars. And you could enter into any one of those agreements. I loved being out with the sisters and talking to them and expounding on all the advantages of going with Caritas Fleet Services. The thing I didn't like was the computer work. And the other one was being far away from my community. It was, Hartford, Connecticut is a little distant from Colorado Springs, even to Omaha, And so I think I was almost there 2.5 years, really, with Caritas before I went back into parish ministry. And this is in Grand Island, Nebraska. And by this time, I'm a little wiser, and I'm going to find a job quick before my provincial decides I should do something else. And I wanted to be, at this point in time, closer to home. My dad's still alive at 93 years of age, and I have 2 sisters alive right around there in Nebraska, one in Waco and one in Lindsay, Nebraska. And I decided I wanted to be a little bit closer to home, because almost all of my life had been in Colorado Springs, Albuquerque, or out there in Hartford and Milwaukee for a time. So I went interviewing for the job at Blessed Sacrament Parish in Grand Island, which is only about 2.5 hours from where Dad is. And again, some of the most wonderful years of my life in parish ministry. Adult education classes, RCIA, funeral ministry. That was the one that shook me up the most, when they said, you're in charge of the funeral ministry and the dinners and bereavement and all that kind of business. And I said, that's not my forte. Oh, don't worry about it. We have a great group of people who assist you doing that. And they did. Fantastic people. A lot of work with seniors, taking communion to the hospitalized and the homebound, doing spiritual kind of counseling. Just absolutely loved it. So then you're in parish ministry and loving it and loving the people. And then one of those religious life things pops up again called an anniversary celebration, which was 40 years. And so I was able to do that at Blessed Sacrament in Grand Island together with my parish community there, and all of the sisters in Nebraska came, and then my family was able to be there too. So number one, I like to party, and number two, having family, friends, and sisters together is about as good as you can do. Oh yeah, I'm going to tell you about a few of my side highlights. I mean, just in case you're worried that I live a dull, boring life. I have some very good friends who have gold wings. Oh, anyway, I don't drive a motorcycle myself, but they are very good about taking me on trips and up into the mountains and all kinds of places. But I did get in trouble with my provincial when one time I didn't tell the whole truth. And because she knew I was going to a meeting in Wichita, Kansas for the regional treasurers group, but I didn't tell her how I was getting there on the back of a gold wing. So anyway, oh yeah, and put me around water anytime. I love it. One of the people that I had in an RCIA class treated me to having a jump out of an airplane. Now that was a little different. This was a one-time experience, so I only got about 2.5 hours of instruction, and then I went tandem with a gentleman who was smaller than I was. Anyway, and another sister, remember Jay? Jay went out there to the airport by Peyton or Lyman, out that direction anyway. And what city am I in? I am in Colorado Springs. Okay, forget where I am. Anyway, so I'm geared up, and we jump out of the plane. I do it again in a heartbeat, but the worst thing was when the chute opens and you're wearing like a harness that's all around your body, and the pulled your guts in and out. Anyway, so the only thing was going too fast. I wanted to look more. I wanted to see around. Well, found out after we were on the ground that we came down on the emergency chute because the other chute somehow got disconnected and was out flying away over there. And poor Jay, who's on the ground, thinks I'm in the one flying away over there. And I don't remember his name as coming down here, but we both came down together. So I have been so blessed to have wonderful experiences. When Sister Clarice was treasurer, she had to go to the Philippines for some meetings one time, and she took me along as a companion, so I was able to get to know our sisters in the Philippines. And they wear these darling little white habits, and they work so hard and help the poor out so well. And so that's in one of my younger years. And really they go out to what they call the barangays and take out food and medicine. And what they do is the families have to walk in from miles around, and they do like an instruction class. Some of it times it's religious, but sometimes for the mothers it's on nutrition and health care and that kind of business. And then they can have their food, and the kids are going to religious classes over here, and then they all have a nice big lunch and a celebration. Sometimes they have mass if a priest can have gone along with them, and then they leave for the day. But they make a lot of trips into these barangays to do that. Okay, now we're getting closer to now. So 2010, I get elected as provincial. You don't have a choice about this kind of business. We have provincial chapters every 4 years. We're going to be having another one in 2014. And that's our life as a religious community. We choose our leadership, the people who will govern us for 4 years, and we also set goals and objectives for ourselves for the next 4 years. And so we did that in 2010, and part of that was to be planning our future and to be evaluating our ministries and to look at ways in which how we as a religious community are going to go forward into the future. So we've been engaged in a strategic planning process and talking with our Eastern community. And so just lots has been going on in the preparation for our chapter when we'll again vote on the direction setting for the next 4 years and then new leadership for the 4 years that comes up after that. This used to be the chapel of the Sisters of St. Francis. It was called St. Joseph's Chapel because we're St. Joseph Province. Well, we started a relationship with St. Francis of Assisi Parish over 50 years ago. We actually figured now they've had the parish longer than we as the Sisters of St. Francis had it. we did not see the numbers of young women coming into religious life, and we had this huge, beautiful chapel, and we had people in the northwestern part of the city who wanted a place to worship. So they started coming to our Sunday masses and to our weekday masses, and eventually asked to become a mission, and they were a mission of Corpus Christi for a while. And then they eventually asked to become an independent parish and evolved into that. And for the first many years, they only had like a parish administrator. There wasn't even a priest assigned to the parish. And so those were hard times, I have to tell you. Now, if you're a little old sister and you've grown up pretty much in this chapel, well, we had boxes where we kept all of our prayer books in, because, you know, you pray all day long. So you have your office book, your meditation book, your spiritual reading book, your little book of your favorite prayers in these boxes. So when the parish first started being part of our Sunday liturgies, we'd come in. Now, I was not a little old sister then, but this is what I hear. Those prayer books would be moved. Now, you talk about a sacred no-no. It's you don't move the prayer books of the sisters in their benches. So the sisters went through some very hard times. They were not really so accepting and welcoming of the parish to start with. And that is so different today, so different. It's a transition. It's always hard to go from what you're so used to the next step of, what are all these lay people doing around me? I don't have the peace and quiet. There's that screaming baby back there. How can I pray my rosary and meditate? It was the best thing that happened to us as the Sisters of St. Francis, and I think for the people there too. We have more sisters who would deliberately, I could never figure out why all these sisters wanted to sit in the back of church. You know, I thought so nobody could see if they're nodding, sleeping or not. No, that wasn't it. It was so they could hand out rosaries and holy cards to the little kids when they came out of church. And sometimes the parents were afraid, too. They'd say, you know, sometimes that sister back there looks like she's scowling all the time. So they bring baby Jonathan to church and goo-goo, ka-ka-ka-ka. And all of a sudden the nun's doing this to the baby, too. And it's like, match made in heaven, match made in heaven. So wonderful experience to have the parish there and their growth and to be part of it. We also, on our grounds there, have 3 of our 4 ministries. St. Francis Nursing Center, which is a 108-bed skilled nursing facility, and we just had Survey walk out with just 3 very minor deficiencies. We're generally at over 90% occupancy, and it's not all the sisters. We only have 5 sisters over there right now, so it's your mom's over there, yes, and so we're just very proud of the service. When we realized that we, as sisters, were diminishing in number, we took this is the old convent, and refocused our ministries on nursing care and on a retreat center and on Franciscan community counseling. This used to be our old garage. And when I was in formation, and Mac too, Sister Mac is here with me. Wave your hand, Sister Mac. We lived above there in our formation community, and now it's part of our retreat center, and it's much nicer than it was in our day, right, Mac? And then our Franciscan Community Counseling Service, which serves a clientele that most of them are on a sliding scale fee. Some do have insurance, but we have to raise at least 60 cents on the dollar for them to be able to, make it through a year. So then we come to the year of 2013 when we celebrate our 150th anniversary. So we started as a little community in Ope, Germany, and during the time of the Culture Kampf, Mother Teresa realized that there was a squelch put on women religious and also men's community in accepting new members. And she said, well, if we're going to survive as a community, we've got to spread out further than Germany. So she put 6 sisters on a boat and sent them to New York, came through New York to a bishop in Lafayette, Indiana, with nothing. I mean, they had their little bag with the other habit that they had, and that was it. No money, no nothing. Well, the bishop was under the false impression they were bringing enough money to start a hospital. So we're very good at begging. I can tell you that. The stories we hear from some of our older sisters, especially in our province over here, that would go up into like Cripple Creek and the gold mining areas, actually with tin cups, begging for money to build hospitals and schools and things like that. Sturdy women who began our community. And so we really began in Lafayette, Indiana, and we spread across a lot of our eastern province has places that went down into St. Louis and up more into Ohio, and most of the places right now are in the Indiana area. And we had such a good reputation that bishops in other parts of the country invited us to come, especially for hospital services. And so they come tripsing along the Oregon Trail and found one hospital in Omaha, Nebraska, another in Lincoln, Nebraska, Columbus, Nebraska, then into Kearney, Grand Island, and here in Colorado Springs and Denver. Those were our hospitals at one point in time. And so we had schools of nursing in a lot of those places, and also elementary grade schools. A lot of people want to know why we have so many sisters who are from Nebraska. Well, in Platte County alone, in eastern Nebraska, we had 9 grade schools. And most of our vocations are from, I wasn't Platte County, I was Cumming County, but anyway, are from that area. And so that's how a lot of the sisters, answered the call to religious life, because of the women teaching in the schools. Because this was the year of Mother Teresa she was beatified, we asked, I told you we were good at begging, our former hospitals if they would make a donation so that we could have this bronze statue of Mother Teresa on our grounds here to honor her. Now, I never wore that habit, and it scares me to death to look at it. So, yes, that's me over there in the habit. I feel like I'm so foreboding, you know. Can you imagine me standing here giving this talk? It's out of my personality, I think. There's a picture again of our mother foundress, Mother Teresa Bonzel, and she's blessed now, so she's referred to as Blessed Maria Teresa Bonzel. We were supposed to take off the mother, because she's just mother to us, but for the church, she's Blessed Maria Teresa Bonzel. So now I'm taking you to Germany. Look at how fast time flies. Here you go. Okay. This is St. Martin's Church, where Mother Teresa was baptized, and where she now has her, was confirmed, made her first communion, and now has her final resting place. And it is but a stone's throw. It is no further away from her home than from me and this gentleman sitting up here in the front row. So you can imagine why she had a vocation. You know, she smelled the incense, she heard the bells ringing all the time. Her mother drug her to church every morning. So the city of Olpe really looks at her as one of their founding members. The Bonzel family was very wealthy and had a lot of land, and that's why the first convents that she really started were supported by her family. They were in her non-sister name, her Aline Bonzel, so it could be kept separate from the community canonically, so the bishop couldn't decide to take it away. So, Mutterhaus and the Kinderhospiz, and then Maria Theresia Street. So this is one of the signs that leads up to our mother house. Again, I suppose some of you've had the experience, but about 3/4 of the communities that I know, their mother house is on a hill. I don't know how come we choose mountains to have our mother houses on, but we do. So this is up the Kiel in Olpe, Germany, and the Kinderhospiz is a children's hospice. They have some absolutely wonderful ministries there. This is the street going up. Going down from the mother house to St. Martin's Church, you could easily walk it in 10 minutes. Going up, it's going to take you a little bit longer. these are the various ministries that our sisters have in Germany. And again, just like us, it's not the sisters who are involved in the ministry so much, but the lay people. For the beatification alone, they had like 8 buses of people who work in our various ministries throughout Germany who came for the beatification of Mother Teresa. So it's the Mother House. The Aline House is a house for young women and men. Now they have 2 gentlemen there who are in need of parenting skills, or they need to go to school so that they can get some kind of skill to have a job. And so both they and their children live there for a period of time. Some do go to school, but to learn how to be better parents. Then there's a special school for those who have I'll call them slow learners at this point in time because the words are not coming to me. And some of them are residents. Some do incorporate back into the general public school population. Then we have the Joseph House, which is a hospice for children. And then because some of the children that they had in the hospice program became teenagers, they actually had to open a teenage hospice. And I never saw anything quite as unique as this. Like the ground floor is all the common areas and the sleeping rooms for the hospice children. But up above are the rooms for the parents, if they want to stay there, or the family. So they can experience respite care, or that they can even leave for a period of time once they have the confidence that the hospice staff is caring for their loved one appropriately. And they have a beautiful room where if the child does die there, that they're laid to rest, and memory books and things like that. And it's really the model that they then started using all over Germany for hospice houses for children. So they do some wonderful work. There's a kindergarten, the Talitha House, and the Balthazar is for the young teenager. This is the front doors when you go into the Mother House. You always park here at the front doors. It's a huge structure. It was built again in the days when we thought we were going to have, 200 novices at a time. So they always call ahead. They come pick us up in Frankfurt generally, and they call ahead and they say, we're at, I don't know, someplace on the highway. And then they ring the bells in the convent, in the Mother House, so all the sisters come, and they're standing, in nice weather, they're standing outside, and bad weather, which was in November, they're standing inside. And you have to go through every single sister and give her a hug in German. Sometimes the Filipino sisters are already there, so you get some English, but their dialect also. And then we always go to chapel and sing Holy God in any language that you're most comfortable with. So this is the little chapel that Mother Teresa was buried the 3rd time. Poor Mother Teresa. First, she was buried in the city cemetery, and then when the Mother House that was down, we had a Mother House that wasn't on a hill. Oh, okay, it was down by the river. And then she was buried in the cemetery next to the Mother House down there, and it was next to a river, and the body really got quite corrupted and was wet from the time it was taken from that coffin and then put into the coffin that she was laid to rest here in this one. And that was when the beatification process started way back, I think, in the 70s. And that's a long, drawn-out process, let me tell you. This was the coffin that she was buried in and taken from now as we were going into her beatification ceremony. And she was put to rest in this beautiful oak coffin. And you can see the gold, well, they're red seals that are sealed. One had to be by the mortician, one had to be by somebody from Rome, and another one from some city official. So it's very proper and legal, I would probably have to say. So this was in a room at the Mother House when we came to visit, and so we spent a lot of time praying around her coffin there. These are the sisters from the Western province, as we call ourselves, who were able to go for the beatification. Again, you'll see Sister Margaret Mary, third from the left here, and right next to her is Sister Marietta, my first grade classmate. So, and they are really two of the ones most connected with the miracle that happened with little Luke Berge, because it was through their intercession and praying the prayer of Mother Teresa that the Berge family really feels that the cure for little Luke happened when he was like 4 years old. And I will show you some pictures of him later. We walked the Stations of the Cross that Maria Teresa walked every Friday. We think it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and barefoot, because prayers were at 6. And when we took this walk, it took us over an hour to make the walk. And so she never even told anybody she was doing this until people finally figured out that she was going out early in the morning and walking this way of the cross, an outdoor way of the cross, before she was present for early morning prayer. So these are some of our Filipino sisters together with those of us from the Western province. The group that was, we also had some sisters there from Brazil, but because they spoke Portuguese, they were in another group that went ahead. This is the way the station looked. It was cold that day. And this is a beautiful little chapel that's like at the end of making the Stations of the Cross that, again, Mother Teresa visited every morning before she then went to the Mutterhaus Church. Okay, the Vigil in Paderborn. So if you want to see Germany, we always fly into Frankfurt. Here's Frankfurt. 2.5 hours north is Olpe, and 2 hours north of that is Paderborn. They're a little askew, but it's just north, 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 pretty much. So it's a 2-hour bus ride up to Paderborn, which is a see of the diocese, like Colorado Springs is the see of the Colorado Springs diocese. So this was the first beatification they have ever had in the diocese, so they were very excited also. This is the Berge family, mom and dad in the middle, and Luke on the far right. Okay, Luke was 4 years old when he had this like gastrointestinal disease of some time. He could not keep any food in him. He was constantly in diapers and they couldn't go anywhere because he was constantly voiding. And this went on for like 4 months through all kinds of doctor's appointments, et cetera, et cetera. And Sister Margaret Mary and Sister Evangeline had gone to St. Patrick's Church to give a vocation talk. And their younger sister heard Sister Evangeline and told her mom and dad, you know, I have to see that sister again. I have to talk to her. So they eventually became friends, and they would go, Sister Margaret Mary and Sister Evangeline would go to the Berge's house for Sunday dinner, and we'd have them over to the convent for Sunday dinner. So when this episode came up with Luke, and they requested that Sister Margaret Mary and Sister Evangeline pray the intercessory prayer to Mother Teresa, because they were at their wits' end about what to do. He lost over 40% of his body weight. I mean, he's only 4 years old. He didn't even weigh that much to begin with. And was just listless, couldn't do anything. And so they prayed the novena prayer, and they think it was more than the 9 days. Maybe Mother Teresa, since she wasn't blessed yet, needed a few more days of praying. I don't know. But it was shortly after they were praying for the intercession of Mother Teresa to Luke that one morning he just got up off the couch, as his little sister says, and started playing like a normal child. And of course, for this whole process, moving toward beatification, you have to have all kinds of doctors' verification of everything. So again, round of doctors to verify, and even now when he's older, to verify that there's nothing wrong, there's no reoccurrence or anything like that. And so he is, as a 18, 19-year-old, you know, not too hip about talking about this, I think, especially to his peers. We had a wonderful time there in Germany. On the far right is our General Superior, Sister Magdalena, who we have our general late mother house in Olpe, Germany, so she's the boss over there. And then we have the 2 provinces here in the United States, a province in the Philippines and a mission in Brazil. This is at the retreat house that we had a meal before we went over for the vigil. Huge retreat house that some of our sisters work in. They're close to the cathedral. So this is going into the cathedral well, it wasn't the cathedral church, it was a different church for the vigil ceremony the night before. So it's all candlelight and in the dark, waiting for the Archbishop to come in. Long ceremonies. Not that I'm not a church-going person, but for sure, all the ceremonies were at least 2 hours. And we had reserved places, thank you, Jesus, but some people were there at least an hour before we got there, and we got there an hour ahead of time. So they stood for like 4 hours, because in some of those churches in Germany, you know, they have pews in the center aisles, but they don't have any on the side aisles. So this one little lady, I just got the biggest bang out of her. I thought, you know, she's done this before. She brought a little fold-out stool. I thought, she's pretty clever here. Beautiful hymns. There was a harpist playing this night for the ceremony, and even though it was all in German, we had the translation in English of at least the homilies and the different talks that were given, so we knew what was going on. And as I told someone later, and the harpist, I said, I could just picture Mother Teresa running up to heaven with the playing of the music. It was gorgeous. A testimony to her life. You know, they give various talks about and her work and her ministry. This is our just past General Superior, Sister Mediatrix, who had a lot to do with making sure this process all stayed on track and went forward. It's reported that she said to Cardinal Cordes, you know, can't we just get this process moving along? And he evidently said to her, Sister, I have got 400 cases of people up there on the wall who want to be beatified. Give me a break. And she said, well, then choose one. And we were just so excited that it happened with the new Pope Francis. And we found out about it on Holy Thursday, which, you know, forever will make that day special too. So then we go home that night. Next day, we trips back for the beatification. Again, Sister Margaret Mary and Sister Clarice, who's a former provincial, and now serves on the generalate with Sister Magdalena. There are 3 other sisters that assist with the general work of the congregation. Taking pictures of people taking pictures. You know, they did a lot of videoing of, we had any number of buses, so we'd have to stop so the camera person could get off and get on to the next bus. You know, all the people gathered together. There were more altar servers than I could imagine. I asked Sister Marietta, who does the training for the altar servers up in Sidney, Nebraska, where she works in parish ministries, because she does that training, and I said, did you ever see so many altar servers in your whole life? Young women, young girls and boys, but I bet there were 40 of them at some of these ceremonies. And sometimes they had to sit on the steps down at the front, and actually they were very well behaved. You didn't see a lot of goofing around, so I thought, well, somebody trained them right. So this is the unveiling of the picture of, or the portrait of Mother Teresa, her new beatification picture. And I do have some cards over there of that picture, if you would like to take it. And down here, if you can see where that red is the reliquary, where part of her bone is, that will be kept in the chapel at the General Mutterhaus. Then each one of us as province, we got a small reliquary that we could bring home, and we have it in our chapel, our canticle chapel at the Mutterhaus now. Sister Mediatrix probably saying, thank you very much for picking 1 out of 400 off the wall. Then another part of the ceremony was we have Mother Teresa's body at our Mutterhaus, and it is to be interred now, we hope for the final time for Mother Teresa, down at St. Martin's Church, because she's not ours anymore. She doesn't just belong to us as a religious community. She belongs to the universal church. So it was only fitting that she have a place down in St. Martin's Church where she was baptized and made her first communion and everything, like I said. So we had a vigil ceremony in our chapel with all the sisters gathered and people from around the city. And then her casket was placed on an open fire truck. And like I told you, it takes 10 minutes to walk down the hill to go to St. Martin's. Well, I've never been on a bus that went any slower in my whole life, but it was supposed to do this. It took us like a half hour to weave through the streets of Olpe. People were standing out on the streets, and then they'd follow along behind the fire truck and all till we got to St. Martin's Church. It was just so impressive. I mean, all of the ceremonies were, you just can't express it in words what you're feeling at the time, because at least I was just in awe. Number one, that we were all there together. We were represented so well from all of our different provinces, and it's always a great experience to be together with our sisters. I've had the opportunity to be in Germany at other times for meetings and things like that, where we've had sisters from all the different provinces, but this was a time we were just coming together to celebrate, which was fantastic. And so we got to know each other in a different way. So this is down outside of St. Martin's Church. We're being greeted by the pastor there and the archbishop, and her casket inside of the church. So we started the first part of the Mass, and then they eventually moved her casket back to this place in the back of a church where there's a little Eucharistic chapel, which we're very happy that it's a little Eucharistic chapel, because, of course, she was with our Eucharistic and Perpetual Adoration. So there's the tabernacle, and this is a two-towered church. But during the war, the tower on this part was bombed off, but the stained glass windows were not damaged in any way. And so they have never replaced the tower, because they want always to have the reminder that that happened. And at one point, they said that the ground underneath of this particular area was a playground, which was right next to a school. And so they could think that Mother Teresa probably even played right where she's buried now, before the church was built. Now, that's in German, but it does say, "He leads, I follow," which is her motto. She's... And sometimes it reads, "He leads, and follow as he leads." So you have to sort of be paying attention. And of course, the Tau is our Franciscan symbol. This is the little reliquary that we brought back from for our province. And like I said, we have it enthroned in our canticle chapel now. And we each got a medallion of Mother Teresa to take home. They didn't have, enough to give everybody who went to all of the ceremonies, but and this is one of our final evenings together, and the Filipino sisters can entertain you with just beautiful dances at all times and singing. So they were doing their farewell, and then the Brazilian sisters were doing theirs. And again, Sister Magdalena, who at this point in time, she was going through chemotherapy. She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer probably over a year ago now, and was going through chemotherapy. It had spread throughout her peritoneum. And so we were praying Mother Teresa's prayer for her, too, because we definitely don't want to lose her. And so she was apologizing that she was not able to be as present with us as she would have liked to have been. She has a heart of gold, and was like, when she would come home from one of the ceremonies, she was exhausted and would need to, do rest and things like that. And it was just like, "Oh, no, sister, we know, take care of yourself. We want you. We don't care right now if you can't spend all this time with us." So after her chemotherapy treatment, they still wanted to go in and do surgery. And when they went, well, I guess they did, I don't know what kind of a test, but they found out that the chemotherapy had taken care of the cancer in the peritoneum. Now, and they also then, when they went in for the surgery, said they could find no cancer. And now we're still wanting to find out this in a translation that's accurate from Germany to English, because the conveyance of that message was not done by a nurse, and so we're trying to still get the real facts, like there was no cancer whatsoever, you didn't take the ovaries, blah, 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 you know, to get the details of that, but we don't know. But we are just so grateful because we prayed for her complete healing, and we're hoping that is true. This is Mother Teresa's house, and it is now a grill and market. And so on our last day there as a Western province, after we went and visited Mother Teresa in her new place of rest, we went to the grill and market, and it's a delightful little place. And we would like to get the house back, but I think the lady who owns it knows it, and the price is rather outrageous, so we're sort of waiting for her to die. No. Anyway, I don't think she lives there, but above lives another lady who's rented the place for many years, but in the bottom level is the grill and market. So we go in and we're taking orders. This is on the side of the house, marking it as her birthplace. Born September 17th, 1830, and died the 6th of February. So we're in there. I don't think we've just gotten in there. We haven't ordered anything yet. So we have to go up to the counter, you know, to place your orders and stuff like that. So I'm trying to figure out what people want and all that kind of business, because, you know, I'm not bashful about going up to a counter and ordering stuff, even if I don't understand German. So we had cappuccinos and beer and wine. Somebody had water and coffees. And Sister Margaret Mary orders pizza, and we had one other thing, I don't know, French fries that we all shared. So I go up to the counter to order this. I don't think I had that picture, no. This young gentleman there, and we're saying, you know, that we were here for the Beatification of Mother Teresa. And he says, oh, yes, all them women up there on the hill, all them women up there on the hill. And I says, yeah, we're some of those women up there on the hill. Oh. So he just very proudly gets out that medallion and whips it in front of me. I got this, you know. So we thought, well, wonderful, you know, great, super, and part of all of that. So we have our refreshment, and we're getting ready to leave. And we have a German sister that's going to drive some of the sisters home. A couple of us are going to walk up. And so she is illegally parked out front. And this sister tends to do that, we have found out. Anyway, so she comes in to say, I'm here. It's time to go. And she knows English pretty well. And we say, oh, no, we're not ready to go yet. You know, find a legal place to park. So she goes and finds a legal place to park and comes in and sits down with us. And we're about ready to get up and leave. And here comes in that friendly waiter guy. And he's got a tray on his hand there and brings us ouzo. I have no idea what ouzo is. But anyway, one of our sisters did know what it was. I don't think I really like it, but you know, you're not going to offend somebody by not, you know, drinking up the ouzo. So we drank the ouzo, and the three of us that walked home, we were sort of woozy from the ouzo as we moseyed on home, but it was wonderful. So. This is the Adoration Chapel at the Mutterhaus in Germany, and that monstrance is one of the ones that was still there when Mother Teresa was alive. And so we go from that chapel to our chapel at Mount St. Francis, where we do not have exposed Eucharistic adoration. We have adoration from 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening, and then Germany has the other 12 hours of the day because we don't have enough people to cover all the hours, although some of our companions and other people have joined us in our adoration also. So, and this is all of us. Every year when we get together for our community days, we try to take a group picture of us, and so this was out at our statue of Mother Teresa. And this is where our final resting place will be, and I hope to be there too someday with a deer walking over my grave. And that's it. Not quite in a nutshell, but